Outgoing KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala has rejected suggestions that the provincial leadership forced him to resign. So he was addressing the media following his resignation as Premier yesterday. This follows his defeat during the closely contested ANC provincial elective conference last month. So Zikalala also reiterated his support for former President Jacob Zuma. All right, so let's get some analysis on what had taken place. Of course, the outgoing KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala saying he never betrayed the former President Jacob Zuma. He was addressing the media yesterday. So Zikalala claims there is a narrative that he sacked the former president and became a staunch supporter of President Cyril Ramaphosa. But he says his support for any leader in power was part of the ANC's principles. So in a statement, the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal basically saying Zikalala offered the Provincial Executive Committee his resignation and they had accepted it. So we get some analysis now from a professor in political science and international relations at the University of the Western Cape, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thanks indeed for your time. So I think it's the aftermath now. What happens now in terms of succession politics in that province?
No, thank you very much, Cristada, for having me, and good morning to your viewers. Yes, indeed, former Premier Sihle Zikalala tendered his resignation, which was subsequently accepted by the provincial leadership. Then procedurally, they then have to contact the national office, which will then basically go through the process of appointing the new Premier. As you would recall, the ANC took a decision that not just anybody could be a Premier. For you to be a Premier, you must be subjected to scrutiny. So that involves, of course, conducting some interviews. So that is the process that is now expected to happen. So basically, it means that now that the provincial government has accepted it, or the provincial leadership has accepted it, then the NEC will have to look into the matter. The interviews will be conducted, after which then the new Premier will be announced. And it has to happen sooner than later so that there is no power vacuum in the province.
Yeah, and I recall after the conference itself where he was defeated, there'd already been a lot of analysis about how Sihle Zikalala would not last. Some also saying he had dug his own grave. If you look back to, I think it was 2016, it was the Mike Mabuyakulu issue, Senzo Mchunu, and the issue regarding former President Jacob Zuma. Would you say that these are some of the factors that contributed to what some are referring to as his downfall?
Absolutely. No, I understand that even the former Premier is aware of that. That is why he saw it necessary to include that in his exit speech, saying that there are people out there who are saying that he didn't support the former President Zuma. The reality of the matter is you have to deal with facts on the one hand, and then you have to deal with perceptions on the other. And in most instances, perceptions weigh more than facts, especially in the realm of politics. Yeah. So in this case, former Premier is right in saying that he supported any sitting president, then President Zuma, and then now President Cyril Ramaphosa. But the perception out there is that he left the former President Zuma in the cold. And then on the issue of Mike Mabuyakulu, there is indeed a perception that he was one of the people who basically made it possible for former MEC Mike Mabuyakulu to exit the stage, as it were. And then also, after he had assumed the position of chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, there was this so-called two centers of power, which I don't know people get this from, because these are all members of the same organization implementing the same policies. Even at national level, they talk about two centers of power. I don't know where they get that phrase from. But the reality of the matter is, after Sihle Zikalala had been elected as the chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, this concept was invoked, and then they started talking about two centers of power. Then they said it would not be right for former Premier Senzo Mchunu to continue to be the Premier when Sihle Zikalala was the chairperson of the province. I know this very well because Senzo Mchunu had invited 4 of us to assist him in capacitating the youth. The first event was going to happen at the University of Zululand.
Yeah.
The second one was going to be in the Natal Midlands. The other one was going to be in the South Coast. Then the last one was going to be at the ICC in eThekwini. But we only had the one in the University of Zululand because on the Friday before that event, he received a letter giving him an ultimatum that he must resign by 12 o'clock on Monday. And that is exactly what happened. Then the other 3 events did not happen. So that is basically some of the factors. Then the issue of former President Zuma. Sihle Zikalala did not appear when this whole thing started. Only later did he join Zuma's court case in Pietermaritzburg, and the masses who gathered there asked him the question, where were you all along? So that is true. It's true that what he's saying is factually correct, but the perceptions out there are that he didn't support the former president, and hence then he didn't make it to this chairperson position, and neither did he make it to the additional members of the PEC of KwaZulu-Natal in the recently concluded election.
On the last aspect that you mentioned, I mean, what does this say about the power that the former president still possibly wields in KwaZulu-Natal, given that you're also talking about Sihle Zikalala mentioning the issue of the former president in his exit speech, if I may. And I want to talk also about this particular succession. The names of Nomsa Dube-Ncube, I think it's Amanda Mapena, as well as Mbali Fraser, also coming up. The ANC has been saying it wants to empower women politically and otherwise. Do you think it will use this opportunity to do so?
Okay, thank you very much for those your two-pronged question, Griselda. On the first one, you don't have to like President Zuma. You just have to deal with the facts. That former President Zuma is a charismatic person. He is a likable person. And the main reason for that is before and during his term of office, he was always with the masses. I recall an incident, for example, at KwaNongoma, where one of the leaders of the IFP had passed on, and Zuma went there to attend the funeral. As he arrived, there was ululation, and then people were saying that some IFP members were saying, come back home. Basically meaning that as much as they were IFP members, but they still liked him. So he's a likable person. And in KwaZulu-Natal, in fact, there is a very slim chance that will succeed politically if you are seen to be fighting the former president, because even though he's no longer the president of the party and is no longer the president of the country, but he still remains a force to be reckoned with. Then on the gender issue, obviously, I think that the province should be commended, because all the 3 names that have been suggested, the name of Nomsa Dube-Ncube, the name of Mbali, and then, of course, the other 3rd person, that is Amanda, all of them are women. And then, of course, it means that whoever is going to succeed Sihle Zikalala is going to be a woman, and it's good for the ANC, not just in KwaZulu-Natal, but nationally, because women have been left out there in the cold when, in fact, opportunities arose for them to take up leadership position. So it's a move in the right direction, I would say.
I have to put you on the spot. I mean, from what we're gauging, possibly a favorite would be Nomsa Dube-Ncube. Do you think possibly, of course, there's this interview process that has to take place, but do you see her emerging as the next premier of the province?
No, without a doubt, because in terms of experience, Nomsa Dube-Ncube, in fact, has the experience, and she has occupied different portfolios in the provincial government. So I think that she stands a better chance. But we cannot compare her, for example, with someone who has just joined the provincial government after the 2019 election. And then, of course, some would argue and say, Amanda is a good candidate, and also given the fact that she comes from the Youth League, which will then be a plus on her side. But in terms of experience, if they are looking for experience, then Dube-Ncube would be the candidate. And then if they are looking for a youngster, then they'll look between the two. But unfortunately then for Amanda, for instance, some would say because her husband was at one point removed from the eThekwini municipality, they might link that to her in the same manner that they did with Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who all along, most of us felt that she was going to clinch the presidency of the ANC, but then others then started linking her with the former president. So I would say, I would put my neck on the block and say Dube Ncube stands a better chance if you compare her with the other two.
Prof will certainly be watching the story as it develops, and of course, who will then become the next Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you very much indeed. Analysis from Professor in Political Science and International Relations at the University of the Western Cape, Professor